The keycard burned in my hand, heavier than it should have been, as if it held the weight of 1,000 unspoken questions. I stood frozen in the polished marble lobby of the Grand Meridian Hotel, San Francisco's crown jewel, while the concierge's gaze steady, unyielding pinned me in place. His name tag read Elliot, and those 2 syllables were already carving themselves into my memory. I'd arrived in the city that afternoon, a 26-year-old runaway from a small Ohio town, chasing a dream I couldn't yet name. My life was a suitcase of regrets and half-written songs, and the Grand Meridian was supposed to be a pit stop, a place to crash before an audition that could either make or break me. But now, Elliot's eyes, warm like cedarwood and sharp like a blade, were rewriting the script. "Room 1408, he said, his voice low, almost a whisper, as he slid the keycard across the counter. His fingers lingered a fraction too long, brushing mine, and I swear the air crackled. "You'll find everything you need there, Caleb." I swallowed hard, my throat dry. "Thanks," I managed, but the word felt inadequate, like trying to catch a storm in a paper cup. The lobby buzzed around us bellhops hauling luggage, a jazz pianist teasing out a melody in the corner, guests in tailored suits and glittering dresses weaving through the space. Yet, in that moment, it was just me and Elliot, a universe collapsing into a single point. I wasn't naive. I'd caught the way his eyes lingered when I'd fumbled through my check-in, my Ohio accent slipping out as I rambled about being late for the airport shuttle. I'd noticed the slight curve of his lips when I'd joked about my suitcase looking like it had survived a war. But this keycard, this quiet intensity was something else. Something dangerous. Something I wasn't sure I was ready for. San Francisco had always been a myth to me, a city of freedom and rebellion, where people like me, people who didn't fit the mold, could finally breathe. Growing up in Millfield, Ohio, I'd learned to hide. Hide the way my heart raced when I saw the quarterback smile in high school. Hide the songs I wrote about boys I could never touch. Hide the truth from my parents, who prayed every Sunday for my soul without ever knowing why. But here, in this glittering hotel, with Elliot's gaze pulling me apart, hiding felt impossible. I clutched the keycard and headed for the elevator, my pulse hammering. The Grand Meridian was a labyrinth of luxury crystal chandeliers, velvet drapes, and mirrors that threw my reflection back at me like an accusation. I looked out of place, my thrift store blazer and scuffed boots screaming small-town boy in a world that demanded polish. But Elliot hadn't looked at me like I didn't belong. He'd looked at me like I was the only one in the room. The elevator dinged, and I stepped inside, the keycard still warm in my hand. Room 1408. It wasn't my room. My booking was for 1203, a standard single I'd scraped together every penny to afford. So why had he given me this key? Why had his voice dropped like he was sharing a secret? And why, God help me, was I considering using it? The door slid shut, and I leaned against the mirrored wall, my reflection staring back, a mess of dark hair, tired green eyes, and a jaw clenched tight with nerves. I'd come to San Francisco to chase a music career, to sing my truth on a stage and hope someone listened. But now, I was chasing something else entirely, and it terrified me. The elevator climbed, each floor ticking by like a countdown. I thought of Millfield, of the church pews where I'd sat, suffocating under expectations. I thought of the songs I'd written in secret, the ones I'd never dared perform. And I thought of Elliot, his steady hands, his knowing smile, the way he'd said my name like it was a melody he'd already memorized. When the doors opened on the 14th floor, I stepped out, the keycard trembling in my grip. The hallway was quiet, the carpet plush under my boots, the walls lined with abstract art that probably cost more than my entire life savings. Room 1408 was at the far end, its door gleaming under the soft glow of sconces. I stood there, heart pounding, the keycard hovering over the reader. What was I doing? I was Caleb Harper, a nobody from nowhere, with a guitar case and a dream too big for my own good. I wasn't the guy who followed mysterious concierges to unknown rooms. I wasn't brave enough for this. But then I thought of Elliot's eyes, the way they'd seen Minute the version I showed the world, but the one I'd buried deep. I swiped the keycard. The lock clicked green, and I pushed the door open. The room wasn't a hotel room. It was a suite, all sleek lines and floor-to-ceiling windows that framed the San Francisco skyline like a painting. The city sparkled below, a mosaic of lights and dreams. And for a moment, I forgot how to breathe. A leather couch sat against one wall. A minibar glowed in the corner, and a king-sized bed dominated the space, its sheets crisp and inviting. But what caught my eye was the note on the coffee table, written in sharp, elegant handwriting. Caleb, meet me here at 8. Elliot. My stomach flipped. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a mix-up with room keys. This was deliberate. Elliot had given me the key to his room, and now I was standing in it, my heart racing like I'd just run a marathon. I glanced at my phone, 7:45 p.m. 15 minutes until whatever this was would unfold. I sank onto the couch, my suitcase forgotten by the door. Part of me wanted to bolt, to find room 1203 and pretend this never happened. But another part, the part that had spent years hiding, yearning, dreaming, wanted to stay. Wanted to know what Elliot saw in me. Wanted to believe, just for a moment, that I could be more than the sum of my fears. The city lights pulsed outside, and I felt the weight of the keycard in my pocket, a tether to a choice I hadn't yet made. 8 o'clock was coming, and with it, a truth I wasn't sure I could face. The clock on my phone ticked to 7:58, each second a hammer against my nerves. I sat rigid on the leather couch in Elliot's suite, the San Francisco skyline mocking me with its endless possibilities. The note, Caleb, meet me here at 8. Elliot lay on the coffee table like a dare, its edges sharp in the dim light. I wasn't ready for this. I'd spent my life dodging moments like this, moments where I had to choose between safety and truth. Back in Millfield, I'd learned to keep my head down, to smile through the sermons, to bury the part of me that ached for something more. But Elliot's key had unlocked something, a door I'd kept bolted shut, a desire I'd never let breathe. The door clicked, and my heart lurched. Elliot stepped inside, his concierge uniform replaced by a fitted black sweater and jeans that hugged his frame. He moved with a quiet confidence, like he belonged in every room he entered. His eyes found mine, and that same intensity from the lobby flared again, pulling the air from my lungs. Caleb, he said, closing the door behind him. His voice was soft but sure, like he'd been rehearsing this moment. You came. I stood, my hands fidgeting, unsure whether to shove them in my pockets or let them hang awkwardly at my sides. I wasn't sure I would, I admitted, my voice rough. I don't even know what this is. He smiled, a small, knowing curve of his lips, and crossed the room to the minibar. It's a conversation, he said, pulling out 2 glasses and a bottle of amber liquid. For now? Whiskey. I nodded, mostly because I didn't trust myself to speak. He poured, the liquid glinting in the low light, and handed me a glass. Our fingers brushed again, and I felt that same electric jolt, like a wire sparking under my skin. I took a sip, the burn grounding me, and studied him over the rim of the glass. Elliot was older than me, maybe early 30s, with sharp cheekbones and a faint scar above his left eyebrow that made him look both dangerous and vulnerable. His dark hair was swept back, and his eyes, God, Those eyes held a story I wanted to unravel. He sat on the couch, one leg crossed over the other, and gestured for me to join him. I hesitated, then sat, leaving a careful distance between us. The whiskey warmed my chest, but it did nothing to quiet the storm in my head. Why me? I blurted out. You don't even know me. Elliot leaned back, his gaze steady. I saw you in the lobby. Caleb. You looked lost, but not in the way most people are. Like you were carrying something heavy, something you've been running from. I know that look. I've worn it. His words hit like a punch. Too accurate. Too raw. I stared at the glass in my hands, the whiskey trembling slightly. You don't know anything about me, I said, but it sounded weak, like I was trying to convince myself. Then tell me, he said, leaning forward, his voice a quiet challenge. Who's Caleb Harper? I laughed, a bitter sound. Nobody. Just a guy from Ohio who thought he could make it as a musician in San Francisco. A guy who's been running from everything his whole life. Elliot didn't flinch. You're not nobody, he said. Nobody writes songs like the one you were humming at the check-in desk. My head snapped up. You heard that? He nodded, a spark of amusement in his eyes. You weren't exactly subtle. It was beautiful, by the way. Haunting. I flushed, the compliment landing somewhere deep, somewhere I wasn't used to feeling. I'd been humming one of my originals, a song about longing, about a boy who loved another boy in a town that would never understand. I hadn't meant for anyone to hear it. Tell me about it, Elliot said, his voice softer now, like he was coaxing a secret from me. The song. I took another sip of whiskey, the words spilling out before I could stop them. I told him about Millfield, about the church that felt like a cage, about the nights I'd spent strumming my guitar in the dark, pouring my heart into lyrics I'd never shared. I told him about the audition tomorrow, a shot at a record deal that could change everything. And, somehow, I told him about the part of me I'd hidden, the part that loved men, that dreamed of a life where I didn't have to pretend. Elliot listened, his eyes never leaving mine, his presence steady and warm. When I finished, the room felt smaller, the air thicker with the weight of my confession. I waited for judgment, for the rejection I'd always feared. But instead, he reached out, his hand resting lightly on mine. I get it, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I grew up in a place like that too. A small town in Georgia, where being me was a sin. I ran, just like you. Found myself here, in this city, in this hotel. But it's not about running, Caleb. It's about finding a place to stand. His hand was warm, his touch grounding, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel alone. I wanted to say something, to thank him, to ask him why he cared, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I turned my hand over, lacing my fingers with his, and the world shifted. We talked for hours, the whiskey forgotten, the city lights fading into the background. Elliot told me his story, how he'd fled Georgia after his family disowned him, how he'd clawed his way into a job at the Grand Meridian, how he'd learned to wear his charm like armor. He told me about the nights he'd spent staring at the San Francisco skyline, wondering if he'd ever feel whole. By the time the clock struck midnight, I felt like I'd known him forever. There was a pull between us, a current I couldn't ignore, but it wasn't just attraction. It was recognition. Two souls, battered by the world, finding each other in a city that promised second chances. I should go, I said finally, glancing at the door. My audition was in 10 hours, and I needed sleep, clarity, something to anchor me. But Elliot's hand tightened on mine, just enough to make me pause. Stay? He said, his voice raw with something I couldn't name. just for a little longer. I looked at him, at the vulnerability in his eyes, at the way he seemed to see me while I see me. And I stayed. The air in Elliot's suite felt charged, like the moment before a storm breaks. His hand was still on mine, warm and steady, and I couldn't look away from his eyes brown, flecked with gold, holding a quiet intensity that made my chest ache. I'd stayed, against every instinct that screamed for me to run, and now I was here, teetering on the edge of something I couldn't name. I've never done this, I said, my voice barely audible. Talk like this. To anyone. Elliot's lips curved. Not quite a smile, but something softer. More intimate. Then I'm honored, he said, and the sincerity in his voice unraveled me. He leaned closer, his breath warm against my cheek, and for a moment, I thought he might kiss me. But he didn't. Instead, he stood, pulling me gently to my feet. Come here, he said, leading me to the floor-to-ceiling windows. The San Francisco skyline stretched before us, a glittering tapestry of lights and shadows. This city, it's where people like us come to find ourselves. Look at it, Caleb. It's yours if you want it. I stared out at the city, my reflection faint in the glass. I saw my self-tousled hair, tired eyes, the weight of years spent hiding, but I also saw Elliot beside me, his presence solid and real. I don't know if I'm brave enough, I admitted. For this. For any of it. He turned to me, his hand brushing my arm. You're here, aren't you? That's braver than you think. His words sank into me, filling cracks I hadn't known were there. I wanted to believe him, wanted to believe I could be the person he saw, not the scared kid from Millfield, but someone who could stand in this city and claim it. Someone who could stand next to him and not flinch. We stood there, side by side, the city humming below us. Then, without warning, Elliot took my hand again and led me to the couch. He sat, pulling me down beside him, closer this time, our knees touching. Tell me about your audition, he said, his voice a low murmur. What's the song? I hesitated, my heart thudding. The song was personal, raw, a piece of my soul I'd never shared. But Elliot's gaze was steady, patient, and I found myself talking. It's called Hollow Road, I said. About a boy who loves someone he can't have, in a town that doesn't let him. It's me, I guess. Sing it, he said, his voice soft but insistent. Just a little. I laughed, nervous, shaking my head. Here. Now. I don't even have my guitar. You don't need it, he said. I want to hear you. My throat tightened, but his eyes held mine, and I couldn't say no. I started softly, my voice raw and unpolished, singing the opening lines of Hollow Road. The words spilled out, carrying years of longing and pain, of nights spent dreaming of a life I thought I'd never have. Elliot listened, his gaze never wavering, and when I finished, the silence was heavy with something unspoken. That was beautiful, he said finally, his voice thick. You're going to kill that audition, Caleb. I looked down, my cheeks burning. I don't know. What if I choke? What if they see right through me? They won't, he said firmly. Because you're not hiding anymore. Not here. Not with me. His words hit me hard, and before I could stop myself, I leaned forward, closing the distance between us. My lips brushed his, tentative at first, then bolder, and he responded, his hand cupping the back of my neck. The kiss was electric, a collision of fear and want, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was running. We pulled back, breathless, and he rested his forehead against mine. I've wanted to do that since you walked into the lobby, he whispered. I laughed. A shaky sound. You're trouble. You know that. The best kind, he said, grinning, and kissed me again. The night blurred after that, a haze of whispered confessions and stolen touches. We didn't cross any lines we couldn't come back from, but every moment felt like a step into uncharted territory. Elliot told me more about his life, how he'd found a chosen family in San Francisco, how he'd fought to rebuild himself after Georgia. I told him about my dreams, my fears, the songs I'd written but never sung. By 2 a.m. We were sprawled on the couch, my head on his chest, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on my arm. The city was quiet now, the lights softer, and I felt something I hadn't in years, safe. I should go, I said again, but my voice lacked conviction. My audition's at noon. Elliot's arms tightened around me. You'll be fine, he said. But if you need a cheerleader, I'm off at 11. I could come with you. I pulled back, staring at him. You'd do that? For you. He smiled, that same knowing curve of his lips. Yeah, I would. I didn't know what to say, so I kissed him instead, letting the moment speak for itself. When I finally left the suite, the keycard still in my pocket, I felt different, lighter, braver, like I could face the world and not flinch. But as I rode the elevator back to my own room, a shadow crept in. This was too fast, too much. I was a nobody from Ohio, and Elliot was, Elliot. Charismatic, confident, a man who belonged in this glittering city. What if this was a mistake? What if I was just a fleeting distraction, a story he'd tell with a laugh years from now? I pushed the thought away, clinging to the memory of his touch, his voice, his belief in me. Tomorrow, I'd face the audition. Tomorrow, I'd see Elliot again. And maybe, just maybe, I'd find the courage to be the man he thought I could be. Morning light sliced through the curtains of room 1203, my actual hotel room, pulling me from a restless sleep. My phone read 9:17 a.m. And the audition loomed like a storm on the horizon. But it wasn't the stage or the judges that had my heart racing, it was Elliot. The memory of his lips, his hands, the way he'd looked at me like I was worth something. I dragged myself to the bathroom, splashing cold water on my face. My reflection stared back, greener eyes than usual, shadowed with doubt. Last night had been a dream, a moment of reckless courage. But now reality was creeping in. I had an audition in 3 hours, a shot at a record deal that could change my life. And yet, all I could think about was Elliot's offer to come with me. His voice steady and sure. I could come with you. I dressed in my best black jeans, a clean white shirt, my lucky leather jacket, and grabbed my guitar case. The keycard to Elliot's room sat on the nightstand, a silent question. I slipped it into my pocket, its weight a reminder of the choice I'd made to stay last night, to let myself feel something real. Downstairs, the lobby was alive with morning chaos, guests checking out, bellhops darting through the crowd, the same jazz pianist from last night, now playing a brighter tune. I scanned for Elliot, my pulse quickening, but he wasn't at the concierge desk. A woman in a crisp uniform stood there instead, her smile polite but distant. Excuse me, I said, my voice rough. Is Elliot working today? She glanced at her computer. Elliot's shift starts at 11, she said. Can I help you with something? I shook my head, disappointment curling in my chest. No, thanks. I turned away, gripping my guitar case tighter. He'd said he'd come, but maybe he'd changed his mind. Maybe last night was just a moment, not a promise. I stepped outside, the San Francisco air sharp and cool. The audition was at a studio in the Mission District, a 20-minute ride away. I hailed a cab, my stomach twisting as I rehearsed Hollow Road in my head. The song felt different now, rawer, like Elliot had peeled back its layers just by listening. The studio was a sleek, modern space with glass walls and posters of music legends lining the halls. I checked in, my hands sweaty, and waited in a small green room with 3 other hopefuls: a girl with a nose ring strumming a ukulele, a guy with dreadlocks tapping out a beat on his knee, and a woman in a sundress scribbling lyrics in a notebook. They all looked more confident than I felt. Caleb Harper. A woman with a clipboard called my name, and I followed her to the audition room. 3 judges sat behind a table, their faces unreadable. A microphone stood in the center of the room, a spotlight glaring down like an interrogation lamp. I set up my guitar, my fingers trembling as I tuned it. The judges watched, their pens poised over notepads. "Whenever you're ready," one said, his voice clipped. I took a breath, picturing Elliot's face, his steady gaze. "You're not hiding anymore," he'd said. I started to play, the opening chords of Hollow Road filling the room. My voice was shaky at first, but as the lyrics poured out, I found my rhythm. I sang about the boy who loved in secret, the town that caged him, the road that led nowhere. I sang for Millfield, for the years I'd spent silent. I sang for Elliot, for the courage he'd given me. When the last note faded, the room was silent. Then one judge nodded, scribbling something. "Strong emotion," she said. "Needs polish, but there's something there." "Thank you, Caleb." I left the room on shaky legs, my heart pounding. I didn't know if I'd nailed it or bombed, but I'd sung my truth, and that was enough. For now. Outside, I checked my phone. 11:05 a.m. Elliot's shift had started. I hailed another cab, heading back to the Grand Meridian, my guitar case bouncing on the seat beside me. I needed to see him, to tell him how it went, to know if last night meant as much to him as it did to me. The lobby was quieter now, the morning rush fading. And there he was, behind the concierge desk, his uniform crisp, his smile professional as he helped a guest. But when he saw me, his eyes lit up, and he excused himself, crossing the lobby in quick strides. "Caleb," he said, his voice warm. "How'd it go?" I grinned, the weight of the audition lifting. "I didn't choke," I said. "I sang Hollow Road. They said it had potential." He laughed, a bright, unguarded sound. "I knew you'd kill it." He glanced at the desk, then back at me. "I'm off in an hour. Want to grab coffee? Tell me everything." My heart skipped. "Yeah," I said. "I'd like that." We met at a small cafe around the corner, a cozy place with exposed brick walls and the smell of roasted beans. Over lattes, I told him about the audition and nerves, the judges, the way the song had felt alive in my chest. He listened, his eyes locked on mine, and when I finished, he reached across the table, his hand brushing mine. "I'm proud of you," he said, and the words hit harder than I expected. No one had ever said that to me before. Not like this. Not like they meant it. We talked until the cafe started to fill with the lunch crowd, and then we walked, wandering the streets of San Francisco, the city unfolding around us. He showed me his favorite spots: a mural in the Mission, a bookstore in North Beach, a park where he liked to read on his days off. Every step felt like a gift, like he was sharing pieces of himself with me. But as the day wore on, that shadow of doubt crept back. This felt too good, too easy. I was leaving in 2 days, back to Ohio if the audition didn't pan out. What was this? Really? A fling? A fantasy? I wanted to ask, but the word stuck, and I let the moment carry me instead. The San Francisco sun dipped low, painting the city in shades of orange and pink as Elliot and I sat on a bench in Dolores Park. The air was cool, the grass dotted with picnickers and dogs chasing frisbees, and Elliot's shoulder brushed mine, a quiet anchor in the chaos of my thoughts. We'd spent the day together, weaving through the city like it was ours. But now, with the audition behind me and 2 days left in San Francisco, reality was closing in. What happens next? I asked, my voice quieter than I meant. I was staring at the skyline, but I felt Elliot's gaze on me, steady and searching. You mean with the audition? He asked, though I could tell he knew I meant more. I turned to him, my heart thudding. With this. With us. The words felt raw, exposed, like I'd just laid my soul bare on the grass between us. Elliot's expression softened, but there was a flicker of something else: hesitation. Maybe. Or fear. Caleb, he said, his voice low. I don't know. I want this, whatever this is, but I don't do this often. Let someone in like this. I nodded, my throat tight. Me neither. I wanted to say more, to tell him how last night had cracked me open, how he'd made me feel seen in a way I'd never known. But the words felt too big, too fragile. He reached for my hand, his fingers lacing with mine. Let's not think about next yet, he said. Let's just have tonight. I wanted to argue, to demand answers, but his touch was warm, and the city was beautiful, and I let myself nod. Okay, I said. Tonight. We ended up back at the Grand Meridian, in his suite again, the city lights glittering through the windows. This time, there was no whiskey, no note, just us. We sat on the couch, closer than before, and when he kissed me, it was slow, deliberate, like he was memorizing every second. I kissed him back, my hands finding his shoulders, his hair, the curve of his jaw. Each touch was a question, each breath an answer. We didn't talk about the future, but it hung between us, heavy and unspoken. I told myself to stay in the moment, to let this be enough, but my mind kept racing. What if the audition went nowhere? What if I had to go back to Ohio, to a life that didn't fit me anymore? And what if Elliot was just a fleeting spark, a story I'd carry but never finish? He pulled back, his eyes searching mine. You're thinking too much, he said, a small smile tugging at his lips. I laughed, the sound shaky. Can't help it. My brain's a mess. Then let me help, he said, and kissed me again, deeper this time, until my thoughts blurred into nothing but him. We stayed like that, tangled in each other, until the city outside grew quiet. At some point, we moved to the bed, not for anything more than to hold each other, to feel the weight of another person who understood. I fell asleep with his arm around me, the rhythm of his breathing a lullaby I didn't know I needed. The next morning, I woke to an empty bed, the sheets cold where Elliot had been. Panic flared in my chest until I saw the note on the pillow, had to cover an early shift. Meet me in the lobby at 10. Relief washed over me, followed by a pang of something else: hope. Maybe. Or fear that this was too good to last. I showered, dressed, and headed downstairs, my guitar case in hand. The lobby was bustling, but Elliot was there, behind the concierge desk, his smile brightening when he saw me. Morning, he said, stepping around the desk. Sleep okay? Yeah, I said, my cheeks warming. You? He grinned, leaning closer. Best I've had in a while. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed, and he glanced at it, his expression shifting. Hang on, he said, stepping away to take a call. I waited, my nerves jangling. I checked my own Finino word from the audition yet. Just a text from my sister back in Ohio, asking how it went. I hadn't told her about Elliot, about any of this. How could I? I barely understood it myself. Elliot returned, his face unreadable. Everything okay? I asked. He nodded, but there was a tightness in his jaw. Just work stuff. Look, I've got a break in an hour. Want to grab breakfast? I agreed, and we ended up at a diner nearby, a retro place with red vinyl booths and a jukebox playing old Motown hits. Over pancakes and coffee, we talked about everything and nothing his favorite books. My worst gigs. The way San Francisco felt like a dream you could never quite hold on to. But the whole time, I sensed something off, like he was holding back. Finally, I couldn't take it. Elliot, what's going on? You've been different since that call. He set down his fork, his eyes meeting mine. It's nothing bad, he said, but his voice was careful. Just my ex. He's in town. Wants to meet up. My stomach dropped. Your ex? Elliot sighed, running a hand through his hair. Yeah. Marcus. We broke up a year ago, but he's persistent. Says he wants closure. I nodded, trying to keep my face neutral, but jealousy twisted in my gut. Do you want to see him? Elliot hesitated, and that pause was enough to make my heart sink. I don't know, he said finally. I thought I was done with him, but it's complicated. I wanted to ask more, to demand details, but the words stuck. Instead, I forced a smile. Yeah, I get it. Complicated. He reached for my hand, his touch grounding. This doesn't change anything with us, Caleb. I promise. But as we left the diner, his words felt hollow. Complicated. That's what this was, what it would always be. And as we walked back to the hotel, the keycard in my pocket felt heavier than ever, a reminder that some doors, once opened, couldn't be closed. The Grand Meridian's lobby felt different now, its golden light colder, its buzz of activity a distant hum. I sat in a plush armchair near the jazz pianist, my guitar case at my feet, waiting for Elliot to finish his shift. His ex. Marcus. The name echoed in my head, a sharp edge to every syllable. I didn't know what they'd been to each other, but the word complicated clung to me, a warning I couldn't shake. Elliot appeared at 4 p.m., his uniform still crisp despite the long day. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Sorry about earlier, he said, sitting across from me. Marcus caught me off guard. I nodded, my fingers drumming on the armrest. You don't owe me an explanation, I said, though part of me wanted one desperately. He leaned forward, his voice low. I want to give you one. Marcus and I, it was intense, but it ended badly. He left me feeling like I wasn't enough. I've spent a year trying to move past it. And then you walked in. Caleb. And he stopped, his eyes searching mine. You make me want to try again. His words hit like a chord, resonant and raw, but doubt lingered. What does he want now? I asked. Elliot sighed. To talk. He says he's changed, but I don't know if I believe him. I told him I'd meet him tonight, just to hear him out. Closure. Maybe. My chest tightened. Tonight. I'd been hoping for another night in his suite, another chance to lose myself in him. But now, Marcus was a shadow between us. Elliot reached for my hand. It's not what you think, he said. I want you, Caleb. This thing with Marcuset's the past. You're something else. I wanted to believe him, but fear gnawed at me. I'd spent my life hiding, guarding my heart from rejection. Letting Elliot in had been a risk, and now it felt like the ground was shifting beneath me. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. An email from the audition team. My heart stopped as I opened it, scanning the words, Caleb Harper. We were impressed with your performance. Invited to a second round tomorrow. I read it again, disbelieving. A second chance. A shot at the dream I'd carried across the country. Elliot, I said, my voice shaking. I got a call back. His face lit up, his hand squeezing mine. That's incredible. I told you. You're unstoppable. I laughed, the tension easing for a moment. I'm terrified, I admitted. But I want this. So bad. You've got this, he said, his voice fierce with belief. And I'm here. Whatever you need. We spent the rest of the afternoon planning for the callback. Elliot helping me choose another song, offering tips on stage presence. His confidence in me was a lifeline. But as evening approached, he grew quieter, his mind clearly on Marcus. I should go, he said finally, standing. Meet him. Get it over with. Can I see you after? I nodded, my throat tight. Yeah. I'll be in my room. 1203. He kissed me, quick but soft, and then he was gone, disappearing into the lobby's crowd. I sat there, alone, the keycard to his suite burning in my pocket. I wanted to trust him, to believe this was real, but doubt was a familiar companion, whispering that I was fooling myself. Back in my room, I tried to focus on the callback, strumming my guitar, tweaking lyrics. But my mind kept drifting to Elliot, to the way he'd looked when he said complicated. I pictured him with Marcus, someone confident, polished, someone who belonged in this city in a way I never would. The thought twisted like a knife. At 9 p.m., my phone buzzed. A text from Elliot, meeting's done. Can I come up? Relief flooded me, followed by a rush of nerves. I texted back, yeah. Doors open. He arrived minutes later, his face tired but softer, like a weight had lifted. It's over, he said, sitting on the edge of my bed. Marcus wanted to rehash everything, but I told him I'm done. I want to move forward. With you. My heart leapt, but I held back. Why me? I asked, echoing my question from that first night. I'm just some guy from Ohio. I might not even stay here if the audition falls through. Elliot moved closer, his hand finding mine. You're not just some guy, Caleb. You're brave, even when you don't see it. You're real. And when I'm with you, I feel like I can be too. His words broke something in me, a wall I'd built to keep myself safe. I leaned in, kissing him, and this time, it wasn't tentative or careful. It was hungry, desperate, a collision of everything we'd both been holding back. We fell back onto the bed, hands roaming, breaths mingling, the world narrowing to just us. When we pulled apart, gasping, he smiled, his forehead against mine. Stay in San Francisco, he said. Whatever happens with the audition. Stay? I wanted to say yes, to promise everything, but fear held me back. I don't know if I can, I said. If I don't get this deal, I can't afford to stay. Then we'll figure it out, he said, his voice fierce. Together. I didn't have an answer, but I held him tighter, letting myself believe, just for tonight, that together was possible. Tomorrow, I'd face the callback. Tomorrow, I'd face the future. But tonight, I had Elliot, and that was enough. The morning of the callback dawned bright. The San Francisco sky a clear, endless blue. I stood in my hotel room, guitar case in hand. The weight of Elliot's words from last night's stay, together still echoing in my chest. I hadn't promised him anything, but the possibility of a life here, with him, felt like a melody I could finally sing. Downstairs, the lobby was quiet, the jazz pianist absent, the chandeliers catching the morning light. Elliot was at the concierge desk, his smile bright when he saw me. Ready to own that stage? He asked, stepping around the counter. I laughed, nerves buzzing. Ready to not throw up? Maybe. He grabbed my hand, pulling me close. You've got this, Caleb. And I'm coming with you. True to his word, he took his break early, and we rode together to the studio in the Mission District. His presence steadied me, his hand brushing mine in the cab, his quiet confidence a shield against my doubts. At the studio, he waited in the green room while I faced the judges again, this time with a new song, Open Sky, a piece I'd written years ago about breaking free, about finding a place to belong. The audition was a blur, my voice stronger, my fingers sure on the guitar. I poured everything into the song Millfield, the years of hiding, Elliot's belief in me. When I finished, the judges clapped, a rare gesture, and one said, "You've got something special, Caleb. We'll be in touch." Outside, Elliot was waiting, his grin wide. "Told you," he said, pulling me into a hug. "You were incredible." I laughed, relief flooding me. "You didn't even hear it." "Didn't need to," he said. "I know you." We walked back to the hotel, the city alive around us. And for the first time, I let myself imagine staying. Not just for the audition, but for him. For us. But as we reached the Grand Meridian, my phone buzzed an email from the audition team. My heart stopped as I opened it. "Caleb Harper, we're thrilled to offer you a development deal." The words blurred as I read them, disbelieving. A contract. A chance to record, to tour, to make my music real. I showed Elliot, my hand shaking, and he hooped, lifting me off the ground in a hug that made the world spin. "This is it," he said, his eyes shining. "Your dream." But as we celebrated over coffee in the hotel cafe, reality crept in. The deal meant moving to Los Angeles for 6 months, working with producers, building a career. It meant leaving San Francisco, leaving Elliot. I told him that night, back in his suite, the city lights glittering outside. "It's not forever," I said, my voice tight. "I'll come back. Or you could visit. We could make it work." Elliot's face was unreadable, his eyes fixed on the skyline. "Long distance is hard, Caleb," he said finally. "And you're about to have a big life. I don't want to hold you back." "You wouldn't," I said, desperate. "You're the reason I'm here, the reason I had the guts to do this." He smiled, but it was sad, distant. "You had the guts all along. I just helped you see it." We argued, softly at first, then with more heat. I wanted him to fight for us, to say he'd wait, but he kept talking about my future, about not tying me down. "You need to be free," he said. "To chase this. To be you." "I want to be me with you," I said, my voice breaking. He kissed me then, slow and deep, but it felt like goodbye. We held each other through the night, neither of us speaking, the weight of the future pressing down. The next morning, I packed for Los Angeles, my heart heavy. Elliot helped me check out, his smile professional but strained. At the airport, he hugged me, his arms tight. "Sing your truth, Caleb," he whispered. "And don't forget me." I didn't cry until the plane took off, the city shrinking below me. I thought of the key card, still in my pocket, a symbol of the door we'd opened. I thought of Millfield, of the boy I'd been, and the man I was becoming. And I thought of Elliot, who'd seen me when I couldn't see myself. 6 months later, I was back in San Francisco, my first single climbing the charts. The Grand Meridian's lobby hadn't changed, same chandeliers, same jazz pianist, but Elliot wasn't at the concierge desk. My heart sank until I saw him, stepping out from the back, his eyes finding mine. "Caleb," he said, his voice warm, like no time had passed. I crossed the lobby, my guitar case in hand, and handed him a keycard. Me hotel room this time. "Your turn," I said, grinning. "Meet me at 8. He laughed, taking the key, and in that moment, I knew. We'd found each other once, across a city of dreams. We could find each other again. And we did.